The following report contains a Zoom conversation that was filmed on February 10th, 2021.
Live from the rented New York City apartment of Deshawn, as well as the Zoom locations of Ohio, Florida, and North Carolina is the January 2021 months. And here is your host, Deshawn.
Lil Baby. I think that Lil Baby is setting the tone for Pacemaker of January because his name is being brought up a lot in a lot of hip hop discussions. And what really rung out to me is Charlemagne the God saying, "We are no longer in the Drake era, but we are in the Lil Baby era." Um, he's out of all the rap artists, he's been consistent with the streaming. I mean, he's been under Pop Smoke, but he's still the main like trap rapper that is having success on the streaming charts. On Me is doing pretty well right now, and it's still rising up the charts. To be honest, I wanted to bring Lil Baby up in the rebuttal because I've been really trying to think, is it really the era of Drake? I'm sorry to throw my artist under the bus a little bit, but I want to kind of discuss, hip hop viewing Lil Baby as it being his era. Are we in the era of Lil Baby?
I feel like when I hear like the era of Drake, I think Drake obviously had transcended just like hip hop conversations. I'm a pop girl. I don't know how much Lil Baby is being mentioned. I know like he had his Rolling Stone cover and all of that was happening for him, and that's great. But I know I don't hear his name come up a lot in just like people outside of the hip hop conversations. And that's just my assumption. I could be totally wrong, but I feel like we don't have him on like a hit with like a pop girl in like a way that you would expect. Obviously like Drake was on Rihanna's hits left and right, for better or worse, but I just think that for me, I think it could happen. I just don't know if it's comparable to somebody like Drake, who essentially was a hip hop star who functioned as a pop star.
And that's the same thing. I would definitely agree. I'm more of a hip hop girl, so I would hear more of these conversations. And Lil Baby is definitely being mentioned. He's definitely always one of the people who, of my era, the greats. He's always one of the newer artists that is name dropped as one to watch for, or somebody that they're listening to. Lil Baby is definitely always mentioned in conversations about newer artists who are still focused on lyrics or do lyrical songs that do hit on the radio, but doesn't stay away from that lyrical content or being heavier on the I actually rap side. But I do agree that it could happen. He's not there yet, but I don't see it as something that he definitely has the potential to become hip hop's next biggest superstar. Timing does have a lot to do with it, as the mainstream, as far as critics, media, and fans, mainstream hip hop is kind of moving away from that coastal bias. It's time for somebody from the South to be on top, and not just in America, not just in the United States, but globally. Lil Baby definitely has that potential. His music has that appeal, and he has the star power. Like you said, what we don't have is that crossover hit. We don't have Lil Baby on a pop song. We don't have Lil Baby on a reggaeton song. We don't have Lil Baby on a blues song. We just have Lil Baby rapping his little butt off, which he's great at. But for Lil Baby to have this era that everybody is putting on his shoulders, for him to reach those heights, he has to just do more outside of rap. And that's not necessarily to say I need Lil Baby to be doing TikTok dances and partner with Fashion Nova and dropping off little verses on everybody's song. That's more so to say him still moving consciously as an artist that knows what he wants to do and the type of music that he wants to make, but making more of an effort to reach a broader audience and have a larger impact than just hip hop fans.
I think the potential is also there when you think about like his performances during like award show seasons. Like his performances actually were memorable, actually did stand out, and were engaging. Not like I was watching the performance, but I was also watching my Twitter timeline. Like it was like really like, oh, I'm going to sit here and pay attention to what he's doing. And I think that's so important right now when it's like, you know, it's so easy to be distracted by this is coming out, this person's doing that. But like to actually be able to keep people's attention and invest in your artistry is like really going to take him far.
I would definitely have to agree with both of you all on Lil Baby. I do think he is poised for greater heights and greater success. But I definitely don't think he's there yet. I don't think we have entered the era of Lil Baby quite yet. And if we're like comparing to Drake in a sense, I feel like he is still like in those early Drake years of success. Like what Drake has become, truthfully, I feel like maybe Hotline Bling might have really shifted everything for him and taken him to the next level. I might be wrong on that, but it had been like years and a lot of hits before we'd even gotten anything close to anything from Nothing Was the Same. And I also feel like arguably Megan Thee Stallion could have had a better year than Lil Baby last year. And so I feel like if there's any arguable case that someone can quote unquote beat you, there's no way we have entered the era of Lil Baby quite yet.
I definitely agree with what everyone has said so far, but I will go as far as to say that maybe when we talk about the era of Lil Baby, where I'm sort of thinking like, when I look at like the streets per se, or just like what people are talking about and really gravitating towards, it's Lil Baby, right? I feel like Drake isn't really running the streets in a way that he was a couple years ago because he's so big and he's so pop that like that I think in that sense the era has shifted for sure. Probably shifted a while back, to be honest. Maybe even around Yes Indeed would probably be like the passing of the torch, I would say, between those two. But I think in that sense we have shifted to their Lil Baby. In terms of like Lil Baby being like a Drake level pop star, we're far from that. But I think there's multiple ways to interpret that.
Before we transition, I did want to bring this up because I saw it floating across the timeline. Lil Baby said it would be him, Roddy Ricch, Megan Thee Stallion, and DaBaby that would still quote unquote be on top or be like household names still in a decade. And so I guess I wanted to hear if everyone agreed with those names. I feel like of everyone that we're seeing today, nobody's a bad bet out of that crop.
I was gonna say that sounds like a pretty good set of people, I would say, especially like given, you know, it definitely depends. I don't know. I think DaBaby is, you know, on a little bit of a probational period right now. He's, you know, acting up quite a bit and the music's not, you know, making up for the shenanigans, not making it worth it. But I think definitely Roddy Ricch, I think we haven't even seen like the, you know, 30% of what he can do. And I think he was also so like left out of end of the year conversations for like what he actually managed to get done in 2020. He was the only concert I went to in 2020. NYU, we had him for our Violet like homecoming whatever thing, and it was the only concert I went to was him and Chief Keef, which was just such a night. I wanted to go home, but you know, I think, you know, he's such a good live performer, and you know, he obviously didn't get to show that to anybody given the circumstances of the year, but I think he's definitely somebody that we're going to be talking about. And then Megan is just like a given just because she's already got her foot in music and now all these other, you know, areas where she's just not going to go anywhere.
I agree. I think that's a solid list, but I would like to know if he was limited to like a certain number of people, because there are other names that I would add, not more so above those artists, but I don't think it will just be them in 10 years. I think we'll still be hearing from a few people in 10 years that recently emerged. So I don't know if he just was speaking because the group sounds like mainstream hip hop artists who are rappers who are loyal to their regional sounds. So I don't know if there were any like specific parameters that he was going for when he dropped that list, but I will add a few other names to it.
It sounds like his friends. Like it honestly It sounded like his industry like rapper friends. He just wanted to name the people who he's been collaborating with. I mean, 10 years, that's a hard discussion to have with any of those names for me, I feel. I'm gonna keep it real. It's just like the crowd reaction towards them has just been super fickle. And it's like they're all like people might say I'm crazy, but like Nicki Minaj, when she came out, we knew it was 10 years wrapped up. Like
But see, they all,
they've
every one
been
of them
in
has
the
at least
game
one
for a
song.
while.
They
Yeah,
all
they've
have at
been.
least one song that'll still be here in 10 years. Whether in 10 years they'll be still big names or not,
Mm,
they all have at least one song that 10 years from now still getting played at the cookout, still getting played at the club, still getting played at the graduation. And honestly, I don't know. I mean, there are some others who have released songs out, but he's right. They all have at least one. We're going to be hearing the box forever.
yeah,
I would
and
also
high
say,
fashion,
We're going to be hearing
and
high fashion forever. Savage Remix is going to be here forever.
yeah,
Dang, I forget the
that's.
name of the Lil Baby song. The little, it's gonna be here forever.
I just think that it's low-key indicative of a way that the hip hop crowd industry is kind of fickle with naming Doja in these situations because she's so pop and so everything, she's so versatile. Because I feel like that's something that I would automatically add in there before I think others came to mind in that group. But this is like also not the first time I've sort of noticed that like that crowd have been hesitant to like name her or claim her as a rapper as much as they have her other counterparts and her other peers in that field.
I wanted to, but this is how I wanted to transition because I disagree with Charlemagne and the rap people, like the rap hip hop heads or whatever, are going to come at me. But we're not in the era of Lil Baby to me. I think we're in the era of the Doja Cats and Megans and Cardis and Sweeties. Like I just, I'm seeing on the low the discourse that's happening right now about like the male artists, like they got to do more with performing now and kind of engaging with the crowd because it seems like pop theatrics is really taking over hip hop. I mean, that's how Drake became Drake. Drake wasn't being Lil Baby and keeping it cool and keeping it real for the streets 24/7. Like he had to engage with that pop theatrics, and Drake, I think, is still doing that. He's still maintaining success. Like DJ Envy was across, and I think DJ Envy was arguing in favor for Drake and basically saying, well, Laugh Now, Cry Later still went #1. He's still being played on radio. I just feel like what Larisha said is correct, and that like Lil Baby just doesn't have his pop moments yet, and it sucks that it has to come to that. But that's how Biggie became big. That's how Tupac became big. That's how LL Cool J became the era of LL Cool J. Like everybody had their eras because they knew that business is business. And like me saying that aloud makes me think how we might really be in the era of the baby.
Larisha's face.
You know what?
We,
That man gets
we,
on my nerves. I'm sorry. Like I get it. Like I get it. But like I don't know. But I was gonna say that I think that something that the industry at this point, because in like when you brought up Nicki, like it was just such a different music industry when Nicki was coming out, that like my concern now is when we're having conversations like this and putting somebody like Lil Baby in a conversation with somebody like Drake is you are pushing him into spaces he does not need to be in yet. And like he's gonna be there as an artist before he's there musically. And so I'm really wary of like rushing artists into spaces they don't need to, in conversations they don't belong in yet, just because you start setting them up for failure like that. It's like when, there's like a pop crave thing going around and somebody quotes it being like, oh, Selena Gomez, and now Selena Gomez getting eaten up in the comments because she doesn't need to be in the conversation. It's just like, you don't want to put somebody somewhere they can't hold their own in as of yet. And I think if he's thriving in the space that he's currently in, let him keep doing that until he's not showing growth anymore. And at that point, then we can have a conversation about what's next for him, what space is going to fit him next, instead of being like, we're going to put him here now and like, just kind of throw him in the deep end and hope he can swim.
Yeah, that's what I feel like these conversations do. And I feel awkward when I talk about like pop success in hip hop. Like it's still very taboo, but it's like you hear someone like Charlemagne who is working for iHeartRadio, like he knows that's a part of the game. So it's like, why are you setting Little Baby up for something that he's not really rocking with right now? And maybe his team might switch things up in 2021, but like Lil Baby is like a street hip hop rapper. Like he's a rapper's rapper for today's age, but will that translate well to the level of it where everyone is, because I don't even feel like everyone's following after him either. Like when we consider that kind of argument, like there's a lot of different people that are being pulled from. I feel like Sweetie's being pulled from even like Megan's being pulled from like I don't really see too much Little Baby being pulled from unless I'm just like not into that scene and I'm just missing some people, and that's probably the case because hip hop is so splintered. It's always been that way, but it even seems like if we're talking in terms of like the men, the kingpins, like look at Pop Smoke. Like we just discussed Whoopty for like 10, 15 minutes. Like I think Pop Smoke is leading the charge. Like people are putting Pop Smoke beats over our pop divas and R&B singers. And like you should do a Pop Smoke type of drill track, Beyonce, or you should like, or Ariana. Like I don't know, man. This is a very interesting conversation that is being brought to the table. And, you know, it is that street factor that's pushing Little Baby up there. But I feel like hip hop fans always get disappointed because it's not always the streets that's dictating Little Baby's career now. Like he got a different ball game he has to play, or shall he choose not to? But and that's the other thing too. Like he also doesn't feel too much like an artist to me that is like doing his own thing but making us go, wow, this is about to take over. Like he's been consistently like pacing his stuff and they're dropping, but it's not like, wow, put a Little Baby beat over Olivia Rodrigo's driver's license and turn up. Like, but people are doing that to Pop Smoke. People are adding Megan Thee Stallion to weird remixes that they're making fun of, but she's still there. Like people are doing that with Doja Cat. So I don't know. I think Charlamagne might have to reassess that statement.
I think what's so interesting about this conversation is that with the addition like of streaming to the charts, we're actually seeing like the streets dictate the charts in some sort of way. So you have Lil Baby, you know, have the biggest album of the year, right? Mm-hmm. But that doesn't also really mean that he's leading the charge in a cultural way. When you look at Megan or the Baby or Roddy or even something like that, right? So like, because it's so difficult now when like we're like halfway there in terms of like the streets giving us the answer, but you also need everyone else to give you the other part of the answer as well. So like I can see both sides of the argument, but yeah, I think if anything, you're probably more on the right track. If we're probably really in the era of the Megans, Cardi, Sweeties, and that whole you know, crew, and Doja. Let me not forget Doja. She's the queen pin and all of that. But yeah.
Before we continue, remember to hit the subscribe button below for notifications on new episodes, bonus clips, and individualized categories. And remember to follow @ChartTangent on Twitter.